9 people have been murdered, including the killer's own mother and stepbrother. 24 have been injured. A young child is in critical condition in hospital. The shooter killed himself in the end. The murderer is a male to female transgender named Jesse Van Rootselaar, who more recently went by Jesse Strang. He started to transition 12 years ago when he was just 12. He's well known in town as an abusive young man. Police say they've been called to his home multiple times. There's so much sorrow and grief here, but it's not just a tragedy, it's a horrific crime. But there are questions about the police involvement too. Not just in ignoring earlier warnings about this man, but also about how they continue to use bizarre language to describe him, correcting journalists even who say he and him, and insisting on calling the murderer a woman, a female, someone who wears a dress. Not even a trans woman, which would be probably more accurate, or a man wearing a dress, but a woman, a female. They just keep lying even now, and lying about such a basic fact it becomes unbearable and forces one to ask, what else are they lying about? Calling a man a woman is such an astonishing lie. It's on par with saying the sky is green or the sea is orange. A child knows it's a lie. Everyone knows it's a lie. So why are they doing it and insisting we believe it? And what else harder to detect are they also lying about, and why? Last night was the first warning. This cop said the suspect was a female in a dress and used the weird word gun person. Have you ever heard gun person? Not gunman or gun woman, which is weird, but gun person. Have you ever heard that before?
That includes the deceased gun person.
Gun person, eh? Female. Not trans, which would have been accurate, just a female. While the rampage was underway, they sent out one of those automatic mandatory warnings that go up on all cell phones in the area. You know, those emergency alerts you sometimes get. And it used the same bizarre, inaccurate language. A female. Beware of a female. Make sure you're keeping safe from a female. It's actually the one thing the killer was not. It's the opposite of the truth. And telling people to watch out for a woman is not helping them avoid death. It may, for all we know, have led people to their death if you're just looking to stay away from females. And it just continued fully into today. Here's more from the police.
So a suspect is identified as an 18-year-old female by the name of Jessie.
And if you think the police were bad, here's the regime media. Here's the CBC. By this point in time, they absolutely knew who the murderer was, every detail. But look at this.
Initially, when the active shooter alert went out, police said that they were looking for a female with brown hair wearing a dress, but we have not heard anything more from police about a possible suspect. Also, careful not to call the person a gunman, because we know that there was an active shooter alert, but police have not actually told us exactly how any of the people were killed or how any of them were injured. We don't know if any other weapons were involved.
So they're telling us not to say gunman because they explain, here's their explanation, the gun part may be inaccurate, even though they're saying it was a mass shooting, it was a gun. Obviously, they won't say gunman, not because they don't want to say gun, but because they don't want to call the transgender murderer a man. They're pretending that no, it's because they don't want to say the word gun, and they think you are stupid enough to believe that. And even if they don't think you're stupid enough, they're lying to you. They're trying to deceive you. They know the truth, but they're hiding it bizarrely. They knew since last night. That's when our friends at Juno News, Cosman Georgia, broke the trans angle of this story by actually talking to people in town late at night. But look at the CBC lie today. Take a look.
Also, a note on our coverage of this story today. We know at CBC News that there are people online who are talking about the possible suspect and other details surrounding this case, but this information has not been confirmed to us by either sources or law enforcement, and we want to stick to confirmed details only as we continue to cover this story. And as we learn more, we will certainly bring all of the confirmed information to you.
They simply refuse to say the truth. Why? Well, because transgenderism is a protected class. you see a favored class, and anything as horrific as a mass murder must not be attributed to transgenderism or a transgender person. So they continue to lie, just like the police did.
I will say this, we identified the suspect as they chose to be identified in public and in social media. I can say that Jesse was born as a biological male who approximately, the information that I have, approximately 6 years ago began to transition to female and identified as female both socially and publicly.
They're lying about a mass murder. They're lying about what happened to the victims. They're lying. Is this the first time they've lied? Here's a cop saying they went to the home of the murderer many times. They were called there because of problems. Were they afraid to do anything because the menace was trans and they were worried that they might get in trouble with their chief if they arrested somebody?
We have a history of police attendance at the family residence. Some of those calls were related to mental health issues.
You know, the Liberals bring in strict gun control, and when you get a firearms license, there's all sorts of background checks. How could this family, how could this murderer lawfully have firearms? Did the police cover up these instances, these multiple visits, because they were afraid of denying this transgender activist a firearm? What else are they lying about? What else have they lied about? That's why I'm worried. I'm angry that the dead and the wounded and their grieving families and friends are being lied to by the state. But more than that, I am worried about what other lies have been told and will be told that are harder to detect than saying the sky is green or a man is a woman. For example, did the murderer leave a manifesto? Other trans mass shooters certainly have. In other cities, those manifestos have been covered up by police for the same reason. They want to stop people from talking about transgender murders, especially any that might be hopped up on drugs or steroids given to them for transgenderism. Can you trust the police here? Can you trust the media here? Here's a story some 18 hours after the murderer's identity was known. It's in the Toronto Star. Let me just read you the headline. Developing, police identify 18-year-old female Jesse Van Rootselaar as Tumbler Ridge school shooter. Female. No, that's just a lie. That is just not true. Now, here's left-wing Now Toronto, which says an 18-year-old female identifying resident of Tumbler Ridge has been identified by RCMP as the shooter behind today's mass casualty attack at a secondary school in BC. At least they say female identifying, which I think is confusing to most people, and it's vague and it's hidden, but at least it discloses that something is up, that they're contorting the language in some way. Everyone else, from the RCMP to the Toronto Star to the CBC, is just lying to you and lying to the community. And what else are they lying about? What else are they covering up? Since when did they start saying black is white, day is night, men and women? What other emergency warnings are the opposite of the truth? Who are the other special groups that they shield from responsibility? Is this how they handle other transgender crimes? We know it's how they downplay Islamic extremism. Now, I don't use the words disinformation or misinformation a lot, but boy, the government uses it against anyone they don't like, including us. But what is this whole thing other than the most brutal, basic, fundamental, heartfelt lying, disinformation, and official confusion possible? What kind of maniacs would talk like this about a massacre? The Canadian government would. The Canadian police would. And the Canadian media would. That's who. And if you don't lie about it too, well, you're just a transphobe.